afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here, and hopefully I know that I'm standing between you and lunch, and that's never a good spot to be, so we're going to have a bit of fun, and we're going to take a bit of a left turn when it comes to this conversation. And it's this topic of talent and how do we keep our gems. And often when we see the title cost management, that's the last time that you want to speak about talent and you've got cost management behind you, because it tends to be the first place we overlook, or worse, the first place that we tend to cut cost. So today I want to talk to you about this notion of talent and keeping those gems and what we have to do. And when we talk about the SME world, it's not so much always the small or the S in that SME, but rather that medium element. When we're a small organization, we tend to really value talent. We're still growing. Whomever we've got on board, we want to hang on to. We nurture these individuals. But as that organization grows, things start to change. This notion of the customer comes first, be it in your finance element or any C-suite level. It's not always the case. And I've seen this very often with organizations who claim the customer comes first. However, you go to their operations and you see how they're set up, and the front of the business is actually reserved for the CEO or maybe the CFO or anything of the sort. We don't necessarily talk about that and the problem or the portrayal of the business to the outside world and to talent. And when I talk about the customer today, I'm not just talking about your end user. I'm talking about what we refer to as the internal customer, the talent within the organization, the people that make that business run every day. And as companies seem to grow, we go further and further into this ivory tower outlook. And we start to look at things in a little bit of a jaded perspective. We're sitting too far away from the business. We're sitting too far away from what we refer to as the fingertips of the organization. And when these individuals need us and need our help and want to grow and want to become a big part of our bottom line, we're not necessarily there for them. And in fact, it gets worse and worse as we move up the organization. It becomes like hierarchical warfare. That the one level down to the next level, it gets worse and worse in how we look after our talent. And that's something that really needs to change. We've got to be able to look at what we refer to as left brain and right brain working together. For those of you that are in accounting in the room, you often hear the term creative accounting. In my world, that's when your right brain is helping your left brain out. We've got a lot of left brain individuals. It's our logical sense, it's the element of mathematics and sciences, and we want to open up this right brain side, the creative element. How do we make sure that the talent we have in the organization understand how valuable they are and how they can benefit our bottom line? And I'm going to share some information with you a little bit later on as to why that's become so critical. If we ignore the talent in the organization for the sake of cost, this will cost us much more down the road, and that's something we have to be able to deal with. So what we talk about here is serving those fingertips, the internal customer well, ensuring that they're taken care of. Now, for me, that requires change. And change for many people, as much as we put it up as a title, is not a very comfortable element. We like to remain in our comfort zone. And I'm not asking you to leave here today and jump right out into your panic zone and create this wonderful organization with awesome culture. But it's about pushing yourself slightly out of that comfort zone into what we refer to as the stretch zone. So what is it that we're talking about? I want to share something with you that we refer to as the customer experience. And this relates to internal customer, your colleagues, your employees, your direct reports, whatever it is, as much as it does for the external customer. And I'm going to take a lesson out of the hospitality sector, a sector that's gotten it right over and over again, at least most people do. When we talk about the customer experience, we talk about three levels. The first of which we talk about, there are the implicits. These are the basic requirements that you have to achieve. In companies, that means giving somebody the job, making sure that they've got somewhere to work at, maybe a mobile phone, absolute basics that are there. And then we move on to what we refer to as expected. Anytime we join a job, a new job or a business, there are expectations that we have, just like your customers, your end users, have expectations when they're dealing with you. And they want to see those expectations met. But businesses do not thrive on simply meeting expectations. They go to the next level up, which is about impressing and delighting the customer. Businesses that get this right go a very, very long way. And whether you're talking about the Googles of the world, you're talking about Kareem, we heard that earlier, Uber, any of these kind of businesses, they go well above the expectation to ensure that they impress and delight. Now, let me share an example from the hospitality sector. Has anybody stayed at a hotel before? You must have. All right. Now, let me ask you, when you go to the hotel, there are certain things I expect to see in my hotel when I get there. And these are what I refer to the implicits. I want to make sure there's a TV. I want to make sure it's clean. There must be some soap, some towels. Ideally, there's a bed where I can sleep. These are implicits. I don't even question these when I check into the hotel. I make sure they have to be there, obviously, if it's an operational hotel. But then there's some expectations. And these expectations now today have changed maybe. I need a satellite wall-mounted TV. I'd like a coffee machine in my room. And not just any coffee machine. Maybe it needs to be an espresso. I've got to make sure that there's certain elements that are there. The mini bar. Maybe there's going to be my iron and iron stand. And a number of expectations that are there. But then there's a whole other level there of this notion of how do you impress and delight people? Let me ask you, for those of you that nodded when I asked you about a hotel, any idea, think about this for a second. When you show up to your hotel room, what is the first thing that you do when you get inside your room? Be honest. Air conditioning? Anyone else? The bathroom. The number one answer in every survey around the world is the first thing we tend to do is check the bathroom. I don't know what the obsession is. Maybe it's the little shampoo bottles. Maybe we want to make sure it's clean. But for some reason around the world, no matter what your culture is, the first thing you do is check the bathroom. Second thing happens to be the view. The third thing happens to be the comfort of the bed. Now, interestingly enough, a few years ago, I travel a lot. I travel about 180 days a year. And I got into one of the hotels that I checked into, and lo and behold, as usual, typical routine, I got in, dropped my bag, and I opened the bathroom door, as I always do. Now, this time around, though, I was in for a little bit of a surprise. When I opened the bathroom door and I looked over at where the bathtub is, let me share with you what was there. I found one of these sitting on my bathtub. Now, the very first thought I had was, housekeeping did not do a very good job. This is obviously from the guest before me. Maybe there was a kid there, but then I noticed there was a little tag on the duck. And it said, "We know that you've had a lengthy journey. We hope that you enjoy a bath and simpler times." And I thought to myself, wow, that's not bad. That's actually quite fantastic. It put me in a very good mood. And this is what I now refer to as the duck factor, because it actually impressed and delighted me. It put me in another experience with that particular hotel chain. And in fact, naturally, I stole the duck, of course, don't get me wrong. And for those of you in finance, this cost 20 cents. It's not a whole lot of money for the hotel. And since then, I've got about 9 ducks at home. I do collect them. Because that's what happens now. Every time I go into a hotel, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a duck, or metaphorically speaking, the equivalent of that duck. I go around my hotel room looking for what's there? What's there to excite me? What's there to impress and delight me? And here's the interesting part, though. Now, what used to impress and delight me has become an expectation. I remember the first time I checked into a hotel many, many years ago in business, and I found a fruit basket in my room. And I said, wow, I must be a VIP. I realize they do that for everybody. But today, if I walk into a hotel room and my fruit basket's not there, I say, well, where is my fruit basket? What was today's luxury becomes tomorrow's expectation. And the reason I bring this up here, not because I want you to go out to your companies and buy rubber ducks to give to everybody, but I want you to think about something. What is your duck factor in your business? What is it that you continually do in order to impress and delight your internal customer? What is it that you do to make sure that your employees show up and say, wow, I am absolutely thrilled to be working for this organization, and I would do whatever it takes. And this is critical. These are the things that we refer to when it comes to customer experience or internal customer, which is your talent. You see, when something goes well, when one of your managers or your employees does something well, and they treat the employee, your end user well, they tell people about it. In fact, today, on average, if I've received great service from your companies, I'll tell an average of 8 people about that. But here's the funny thing is, and this is what we refer to as moments of truth, and I'll explain that in a moment. That's the external experience. But what happens internally? What happens when your managers are walking around not speaking so pleasantly to your talent? And the experience starts to change there. And then, of course, we tell on average of 22 people about a negative experience with an organization. And today, with social media, that could potentially be thousands of people, in fact. But that experience, that negative experience, does not come from one employee. It comes on how we treat one another within the organization. It's how we deal with one another's employees and staffs and colleagues. And one bad thing goes on. Have you ever had this experience? You're having a very bad start to the day. In fact, your alarm didn't go off and you're running late. And you jump out of bed and you run out there and you finally, you shower, you get ready, you get into your car. It's bumper to bumper traffic on Sheikh Zayed Road. You simply cannot believe what's going on. You're finally close to home, close to your work, and you decide you're going to pull over to Starbucks, get a quick coffee. You're almost there anyway, and you're late, nevertheless. You pick up your Starbucks, you get out there, you accidentally hit the curb, and the Starbucks coffee now is all over your clothes. No time to go back home. You are in the worst possible mood that you can be in. You walk into your office, and your line manager does this. Good morning, Edward. And that's all they say, and that's enough. Because that will determine how you will treat your end user for the rest of the day. You cannot wait to release some of that anxiety, that anger and frustration that's within you. So it's that internal customer experience that makes far more value to us and the end user, and rather simply thinking, we're great with our customers. No, your customers, your talent are those that are inside the company. And that's where these moments of truth come in. A few years ago, when we started the business, one of our very first clients was Scandinavian Airlines. And we coined the term moments of truth. And it stands for never to be repeated opportunities to distinguish yourself from each and every one of your competitors in a memorable fashion. That's a moment of truth. And businesses are always faced with moments of truth. I would almost argue hundreds of them every day to differentiate themselves from each and every one of their customers in a memorable fashion. Each and every one of their competitors, pardon me. That's what we have to look for. Talent today has one eye out looking at the opportunities that are available and one eye inwards to see, how am I treated by my company? Am I valued, or am I a line on the sheet, on the cost element that tells them, I'm not too sure. There's way too much money spent on them. Take advantage of those moments of truth. You see, we make huge investments in companies. When we've got our buildings and our facilities, we spend an enormous amount on that, on what kind of fit out we want, what building do we want to be in Dubai. And then we get into the leadership level. And of course, the CEO needs a very large housing allowance and car allowance and all the fancy benefits that come with that. But when it comes to the talent within the organization, when we look at how do we develop our people and make sure that they stay and they deliver to our bottom line, the investments get thinner and thinner. In fact, cost cutting is one of the areas that we start to look at. So the picture doesn't look that great. We, in fact, don't look after those talent and the gems that we have. And we become one of those revolving door organizations. People are coming and going rather than staying with us and ensuring that that talent, that brain power they have, is being invested right here in our company. This is a very interesting study for those of you that might be a little bit hesitant to look at talent and say, does it really impact our bottom line? Several years ago, this was published in the Harvard Business Review that showed there's a direct correlation between internal service quality and revenue growth and profitability. This was one of the most earth-shattering reports that came out on the bottom line of companies when it comes to looking after the internal customer. That if we get that right, and we make sure that we take care of our employees, and in turn, they will look after our customers, and bottom line is, we'll have more profitability, and we'll see more revenue growth that comes out of there. That tells us that we have a responsibility to the people within the organization. And let me tell you about people in organizations. Does everyone know the little kids' cartoon or the storybooks, Winnie the Pooh? If you have kids, I suspect you do that. I have to bring up Winnie the Pooh. It's Canadian, if you didn't know that. So there's a little bit of a patriotism element that's there. Now, if you remember the characters in Winnie the Pooh, there's one particular character that's constantly excited. Any idea who that is? Shout it out if you remember. It's Tigger, the tiger. And Tigger is a very, very excited personality. It's always, in fact, the song goes bouncy, 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 bounce. He's one of those characters that's always happy, always excited. Yeah, let's go do this over here. Let's go do that over there. Constantly excited. And there are people in your organizations that are exactly like that. In fact, these are the super positive individuals in your organization. But then there's another group in the organization, another character in Winnie the Pooh that's always down on his luck. Any idea who that is? It's the donkey, Eeyore. And this guy walks around moping all the time. He doesn't like to be there. Oof, you want me to move from here to there? That looks like a lot of work. I'm not too sure about that, and so on. And these are the kind of people we have in our organizations. They're the super negative people. And they're absolutely toxic on a business. They're there. We can't ignore them. In fact, most studies show that we've got about 20% of the organization that's super positive and another 20% that's absolutely negative. No matter what you do as an employer, these individuals remain negative. But here's the interesting part. That leaves us another 60%. And in my little story of Winnie the Pooh, who might that be? That's Winnie. That's the bear. And Winnie the Pooh is a very nice character. However, he needs to be motivated. What motivates Winnie? Honey. Show me the honey. And they said, hey, you got honey? What do you want me to do? Jump over mountains? Leap through hoops of fire? No problem. But definitely motivate me that's there. What's interesting though, organizations, when we think about talent, we obsess over that super negative bottom 20. And we think we're convinced we can change these individuals. But rather we realize that the talent, those hidden gems, sit in that 60%, that if left to their own devices, will be very easily swayed by that bottom 20%. They'll be swayed over a cup of coffee or when they're getting some water from the kitchen or the pantry, and that's where the negativity starts. And that's what we have to look for. If we want to manage talent and we want to make sure we retain talent, it's that 60% in between, the Winnie the Poohs of the organization, that we have to go after and make sure that we create that duck factor for them, that we treat them right and show them that this is the organization they need to be in. Because people have a choice in life. You've got people, and if you've ever been to a supermarket, you know there's the baggers at the end of the checkout line. And sometimes you see some of these baggers and you look at them, you say, wow, this guy definitely woke up today and said, why am I even going to work? Their shirt is tucked out, they don't look very good, they're exhausted, they put the eggs at the bottom, they throw the cans on top of it, maybe some tomatoes that really mess things up, and they absolutely don't care. But then you look across the line and there's somebody that's well-groomed, excited and smiling. This is what we refer to as the double bagger of companies. And these are individuals, they're paid the same amount of money. They don't have more or less benefits than one another, but they make a decision in life. They make a decision that when I show up to work today, I'm going to be that double bagger. I'm going to go above and beyond the call of duty for my employer. Now it doesn't come out of thin air. For some people, it's a personality trait. For others, it's something that we have to work hard at. And this is something we refer to as employeeship. Employeeship is when an individual makes a wholehearted attempt and a goal-oriented effort in 3 particular areas. It's not one or the other, it's 3 particular areas, and when we do that, we achieve employeeship. What are these areas? The first of which is something that's very important to practically everybody here, productivity. We want to make sure people are productive, but we also tend to look at quality. You can't be productive and create poor quality results. But here's the third one that gets missed out, and that's relations. We tend to forget that organizations are made up of people, and people desperately need relationships. They need to feel a connection, an emotional element to that organization. And when we do that, we reach a level of that employeeship. When all of the employees are deadly committed, without a doubt, they're deeply committed to the survival and the development of your organization. When they're providing productivity, quality, and a sense of relationship within the organization, this is when they're demonstrating employeeship. So I would urge you as you leave here today to think about this and think about what is it that we're doing to get the most of our employees, not just for the sake of the bottom line, but for the sake of the relationship that's being built, for the sake of the quality of what we do. Because as long as we can treat these individuals right, they will thank us or they will give in return to our bottom line as businesses. So talent, those gems that we have, are far more than simply numbers that show up on a balance sheet or on your income statement when you're looking at that. They're individuals that can make or break your business. I'm going to leave you with a bit of a quote here from one of my favorite individuals who passed on a couple of years ago, Maya Angelou. And Maya Angelou had said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And no matter what your role in the organization, be it in finance or HR or at the C-suite level, in CEO level or anybody else there, it is about how we make individuals feel. And if we can get that right, I can assure you that internal service quality will have a direct effect on the bottom line of that organization. With that, I thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of this event and certainly the lunch that you have. Thank you.